All right, everybody, it's Dr. Malaika, and I am here with my sister.
Hello, world.
This is Enjoli Cowan, and we tried to do a Facebook Live interview with her, and technology got in the way. So I had lunch with her today, so I said, perfect opportunity for us to actually do this in person because I feel like it was necessary for you to hear her story. So we're going to redo this. So say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
So introduce yourself, give a little bit about you, who you are, and then I'll start asking you some questions to get into it.
Okay, I am Enjoli Cowan. I'm 38. I'm a mom and a wife, and I am an educator, finally. Starting my career as an educator, doing what I was supposed to do all along.
Yeah, and what else? Because, I deal with mental health. I teach psychology. I have therapy clients. So why do you think I picked you? What's your story?
Because I have a history of mental illness.
Right. And she also grew up in the church. So she has that dynamic of dealing with your faith in combination with how do I deal with the fact that I have this diagnosis.
Right.
And so let's start with that. Do you feel like there was ever a conflict or pressure to not get the help that you needed from the mental health standpoint because your faith said you're supposed to do this?
Most definitely. I feel that for myself and for a lot of people, it's looked at as a lack of faith to seek out help from anywhere other than the Bible or within the confines of the church.
So how did you deal with that?
For a long time, my mental illness went untreated because I didn't want to, quote, not trust God. So I chose to trust God by listening to what people were saying about what God would be displeased with. And in the interim, I ruined my marriage and definitely adversely affected my relationship with every single person around me.
So you told a story when we did this initially about when you realized it was at a point that it was critical, a point for you that life happened in combination with your mental illness and enough stressors that it was like a perfect storm of stuff that happened for you. And go ahead and retell that story and then we'll talk about that.
In 2008, I got married in March of 2008. My father's health hadn't been so great. He and I were super close. We talked every day. So when I moved him into his building, it was a senior building, but it wasn't assisted living. Like, they all come and go as they please. But I kind of joked with the lady, if I ever call you because I can't get a hold of him, you better go check on him. And we laughed it off. Well, November of the same year I got married, I was in a high-risk pregnancy on bed rest. And I called my father on a Sunday, no answer. Monday, no answer. So that Tuesday when he didn't answer, I called the manager. She called me back a few minutes later, say, your father has fallen. He's on the floor in the house. I need you to get here. So I had my roommate, Glenn, I will never forget you, and he took me to my father, and I was able to see my father get wheeled into the ambulance. And within 4 weeks of that, my father had passed. So here I am, 4 months pregnant. Well, actually at that time, about 5.5 months by the time we had his ceremony. I'm having my first child. I haven't even been married a full year, and I'm burying my best friend. And I had multiple people, including my pastors at the time, tell me that, you got to get over this. You can't keep letting this break you. You've got to look like victory. And I did not know how to do that. So I went to the doctor I don't remember who told me to, but somebody encouraged me and I actually went. And I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, and something depressive disorder. The name isn't important, but the condition definitely was. I was having night terrors. I wasn't sleeping. I was having dreams of my child dying. It was horrific. And basically, the doctor was telling me that by refusing to take the medicine, I was choosing my child's life over my own, which a lot of people would think is commendable, but he was telling me, if you die, the baby won't make it anyway. So in silence, I suffered with healing, not with sickness. Listen to me. In silence, I was doing what was making me better, but I was so ashamed of it that no one but my husband and my mother knew.
So now you're getting the treatment and the help you need, but you're still carrying a burden, you're still carrying a weight, you're still carrying guilt, you're still feeling like you don't have enough faith.
Absolutely.
You're not a good saint. You're
not representing the kingdom well.
Right. And so you're carrying all of that. So even while you were getting the help that you needed from a professional standpoint, what was still some of the emotional stuff that you were dealing with throughout that? period.
I struggled worshiping, especially in church. I felt like I was living a lie. I felt like I was crying and people didn't understand that I wasn't crying because I was broken. I was crying because I didn't think I should have felt so bad getting better.
Right.
So it was dealing with the inner turmoil of, if this is what Christianity is like, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be. It made me rethink my entire spiritual belief system, because what kind of a God would be okay with me not being okay?
Right. And then I feel like you're a prototype of those who sit in the pews and suffer in silence.
Yep.
Because they're stigmatized, even more so. Okay, so let's just be real with it. We're both black.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
in the black
Put it out
community,
there.
in the black community,
we don't do it. We don't get
there's
that
a
help.
mental health stigma. We don't go to counseling, we go to church. And even when we go to church, we don't still really get the help that we need.
No.
And so we sit in silence and suffer. And I feel like we're surprised when the pastors commit suicide. We're surprised
when their marriages don't make it, with all the things that happen to the rest of us.
When the help is there and there's professional assistance there, and we make you feel bad for getting the help.
Right.
If you had diabetes and went to the doctor, we would make you feel bad for going to the doctor and taking your insulin shots.
I've seen many of mothers do it in the annex.
Recommend that.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, we think that that's what you're supposed to do. We recommend that you get your physicals every year. We recommend that women get their well checkups every year, but we don't push people to get their mental health checkups. And that was the thing, and the reason why your testimony was so strong for me is because I felt like you were screaming out loud, this is what mental illness looks like. This is what depression could look like.
Yeah. It's not the stigma.
Exactly. Like, you look at her and she's not a person that's homeless and on Skid Row.
No.
She's educated. She's a wife. She's a mom. She's a professional.
True.
And she's the person that was achieving in spite of dealing with those other things. And so I think with all the high profile celebrities that have committed suicide recently, everybody kept saying, I don't understand why.
Which is offensive.
Right.
Because I've always thought that money only fixes money problems. So
Right.
the ignorance is so blaring if you believe that people with money don't go through anything.
I kind of feel
that
like
is just
it's
crazy to me.
I kind of feel like the pressure is worse because
Yeah,
I feel like
the
you
whole
assume-
world is looking at you now.
Exactly. You're on a stage. Everybody expects your life to look a certain way. You don't have the ability to be free and be who you are. People won't accept a lot of times the authentic you.
No.
And I feel like church is a reflection of that. Because
And I
they don't
believe
take the authentic you.
I also believe that sometimes church is as much of a performance as what these entertainers do. We look at them as they're entertaining us, but that's what church became for me, because I definitely wasn't walking in my truth. I was sitting in church feeling completely unloved and unsupported by my leaders, and almost feeling sidelined in my own quest for sanity, which to me at this point in my life where I am adamant in going where I will grow, I wish that I had had this back then, because worse could have come to worse. I didn't want to live on earth without my father. I did not want to, but it was imperative that if I was to stay on this earth, that my father not be the topic, but my health become it.
Right. And this is not a church bashing thing.
Not at all.
You guys know
Not in
I'm
the
a
least
minister.
bit.
I grew up in church. My faith is important to me, but I feel like at some point in time we have to elevate our thinking, and we have to be honest about the people that we serve in the pews, and honest about the struggles and the needs. I feel like meeting the need is more than just preaching the scriptures.
Needs
and
assessment
teaching.
is important in
What
any
is your,
setting.
What is your demographic need? If you're in marketing, you would find these questions out before you market your product and how to market it. What do the people in the pews need? And mental health is something that cannot be ignored any longer.
the truth.
It's happening. Too many pastors are preaching messages and then going home and committing suicide.
The truth.
So at this point, we have to say, what can we do better? And what training, what education can we get to at least triage this better, and then have professionals either on staff or have professionals in relationship that we can send them to get them the help that they need. The other thing you said that I think was key is you had to prioritize your health over the health of your child. And a lot of times people think that that's selfish.
Yeah, I thought it was, but it was a necessary selfishness. That's how the Spirit gave me peace with it, and I walked in that peace.
And I tell this to my students, I tell this to my clients, that it's the similar, I use the analogy on the plane. When they tell you if the oxygen mask comes down, if you're with someone
it
who
on
needs
yourself
assistance, you help yourself first
Right.
to help them. Because if you're struggling, you can't help anybody else. and you're the vessel that was housing that child. And if you're physically and emotionally and mentally not okay, the baby feels everything. It's not just ingesting what you eat, but it feels the stress that you feel. It feels everything, the worry, all of that stuff. So I'm glad that the doctor presented it to you like that, and presented it to you in a way that you could receive it. Because I think it's hard when you're a person that cares about other people to say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice dealing and helping others to help myself. It's not a selfish thing, it's a self-protective thing, and it's necessary, because if you don't care for you, you
and
can't
he told me,
guarantee that other people are going to care.
He said, I could tell you right now, your child may be stillborn, you may miscarry. He said, but I can also tell you, if this goes untreated, I can guarantee you this baby will be worse.
Right. And it's like you have to pick. You have to look at, and it's not a doomsday worst case scenario thing. It's
the reality.
This is the reality. These are the options that could possibly happen from depending on what choice you make.
Absolutely.
What is the path of least resistance, the path with the least amount of risk that will be beneficial for you and the baby?
Right.
Because you being okay means the baby will be okay.
Absolutely.
And then you got to care for the baby once the baby gets here.
True story.
And so that's the next thing that you have to deal with. And as a new mom, I'm sure that was a lot to deal with.
Postpartum was a raging fear. And I was like, if I don't get a handle on this while I'm carrying him, then once he gets here, all of this stuff that I couldn't release is going to implode, and I'm not going to be able to control it.
So what are some of the things that you do now that helps you maintain, because life doesn't stop happening.
No, ma'am.
And bad stuff happens to everybody. We all just have to figure out how to adapt and adjust and push through it.
Right.
You already talked about the fact that you buried your dad, and that was something that still you deal with still.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it wasn't yesterday. Like for me, it's been a year.
It's been 9.5 years for me.
You, it's almost a decade, but it still feels like yesterday.
I heard something on a television show. I can't think of the name of it right now, but they were saying that time doesn't heal all wounds. Wound care does.
Right.
Any wound that goes untreated will get infected.
Yeah.
And I feel like this, nobody's ever going to say, man, losing my dad was the best thing that ever happened to me. But it allowed me to see myself in a way that I had never had to look at me. I always was able to go to him to find my balance. And there are going to be times in life where the people we look to for stability will not be accessible, whether by choice or by life's happening. And you're going to have to find that stability on your own, or you will undoubtedly fall. There's just no way around it.
So you pushed yourself to find the strength within yourself, even when it was a moment where you didn't feel like you had any
more
strength.
than a moment. A moment to me seems like passing. I don't think there's ever been a moment when I didn't feel like, I feel like it's almost like a sobriety. I'm trying to be sober from depression. Right. It's a daily fight. It's an hourly fight. It's a nanosecond fight. Like, just some moments I can be fine, and then other moments I'm not. And I've learned that it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay not to tell somebody. And which is why I reach out to you.
Exactly, she does.
At
she will
random.
text me.
Hey,
she will inbox
I'm not good,
me.
Malika. I'm
if
not doing good.
If she needs prayer,
she
don't always have to go into details.
No.
She'd be like, I'm not doing okay.
I'm not doing good.
Pray. And, you know, or I need advice. Can I call you?
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that. I feel like we don't want people to see us as weak because we feel like weakness is something that it has a negative connotation. But I feel like there's a strength in weakness.
Yes, ma'am.
It's being honest and saying, I don't have it all.
Yeah.
I'm not okay in this moment.
Yeah.
I'm reaching to another person to help me through this.
Right.
Because that means that you're fighting. I'm weak, but I'm fighting to get through this moment. Or I'm fighting to get through this situation.
And without fear, what is courage?
Right.
Courage and bravery don't exist without fear.
Exactly.
It's the ability to push past that fear to be courageous or to be brave. So if we're honoring people for their courage and their bravery, then we're acknowledging the presence of fear, but we're acknowledging that the fear wasn't something they saw as insurmountable. And I think that's what mental health is. Whether you believe in God or you don't, you can't pray away mental illness. And that's not to say that prayer doesn't change things. Yes, the Bible says, you know, we have to have a renewing of our mind. But if your mind is the organ that is sick, you are doing yourself a disservice by trusting anything it tells you to do, up to and including taking your own life.
Right. Because it's faulty.
Yeah.
And so
I don't trust a sick heart to beat in syncopation the way a healthy one would. Neither would I trust my sick brain to always tell me the right thing to do. That organ is sick. And I trust myself enough to know I can't trust myself sometimes.
But let's look at it from this point. If you want to get deep with it, from a spiritual standpoint, don't trust your flesh,
Not
because
at
if
all.
your flesh
Never.
tells you something, you already know it's going to go against the will of God.
Absolutely.
So we want to be deep with it. We can say that we know we put no trust in our
Yeah.
flesh, because we know that it's ungodly and it's sinful.
Absolutely.
So you have to look at it from the same standpoint of a person that deals with mental illness. They know that they can't trust that part of them, because it's
Absolutely.
not going to give them the right guidance. It's going to send them in a path that's contrary to where they want to go. And so it's acknowledging that.
Absolutely.
It's finding the resources. It's making sure you have a support system. So what's your support system? I feel like that's
My husband, my children, you, people that I've never met, people who I stalk on Facebook, and I get encouraged
she
by
Facebook
them.
stalks. She does.
So I find my support in all types of places, but the important thing is to access that support. Some people you're going to be able to call. Some people you don't have to call them. You can glean from their moment of weakness, and God has used me to strengthen other people when I felt like I wasn't strong enough to help my doggone self. So I have all kinds of support system. I've also found healthy outlets to cope. I will sing myself happy. I will pray. I will put on some crazy music and dance with my boys till I am coughing and out of breath, because sometimes reminding yourself, not necessarily of who you're living for, but being reminded of what life has to offer you in the good capacity is enough to make you set aside the things that make you feel like life is unlivable.
I call it weighing your positives.
Yes, ma'am.
I feel like if you focus more on the positive and put more weight on that
Yes, ma'am.
positive,
Absolutely.
that it doesn't mean the negatives don't exist.
Not at all.
But that's not my focal point.
Right.
And when that's not my focal point, there's going to always be this positive spin that I have, this hope.
Right.
I call it hope in the midst of tragedy, in the midst of trials.
Right.
And so if you weigh your positives, that allows you to be able to do that. So
Absolutely.
we could go forever, but we don't have forever. So we're going to end this this interview, and I just want to thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I feel like
appreciate it.
this will help someone, and they'll be able to see and hear your experiences and hopefully get some help.
Yeah.
And until next time, you guys have a great rest of your week.
Bye.